The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise." But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about along the way?" But they remained silent, for they had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all." Taking a child, he placed it in their midst, and putting his arms around it, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." My sisters and brothers, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
We're certainly reminded in many of these scriptures how we're to treat one another, especially children. And that's why we continue to pray for the ongoing conversion of our church and of our leadership. I want to go back to the first reading. We hear that expression, I probably mentioned this before, and it comes out in Sirach. And by the way, Sirach is a wonderful book to read, not just as we're going through it now, but throughout the year. It's got such wise sayings. It comes at a time when the prophets have already spoken, when Israel already had its exodus and its conversion to God, and it's filled with wise sayings for everyday practical living, which we all need individually and as a church. But one of the expressions, fear of the Lord, probably mentioned this before. So often people could read that and did read that as, oh, you've got to be frightened of God. You know, he's ready to pounce on you if you do the least little thing. And so always, be afraid in the way we understand the word fear. Here, the way it's understood, we need to hear it today in terms of what it means. I kind of think of it as like, I remember my mother deeply loved me, but when I knew I did wrong, I feared her. I didn't fear her because I didn't think she didn't love me. I feared her because I knew I was wrong. There were consequences, and she loved me enough to call me out on it. And in a way, that's what's being said here. Our culture and our world and even our church has probably gotten too caught up in my life is my own and I do with it what I want. My freedom is to be free to do whatever I want. And, oh yeah, if I sin here or there, I'll ask forgiveness and God will be understanding. But the point being, we are called to be in awe of the Lord. We are to fear him in the best sense, as a God who loves us enough to call us to consequences, who loves us enough to put out there for us, hey, where individually, as a church and as a human family, we do wrong. He loves us enough to want us to stop and say, God, we're called to follow your way, because your way is the only way to really live in peace and justice, in an inner sense of knowing we're on the right path. And so, again, going back, fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, turn not away, lest you fall. Again, coming back and staying centered in the Lord. You who fear the Lord, trust him, and your reward will not be lost. You who fear the Lord, hope for good things, for lasting joy and mercy. You who fear the Lord, love him, and your hearts will be enlightened. Maybe in the best sense of all, and this is something we can pass on to others, and they might ask, hey, you know what I heard today at Mass? We're to fear the Lord. And some will probably, well, aren't you supposed to love the Lord and believe he's good? Yes. And at the same time, no, he loves us enough that he can put in a mature, healthy way a fear in our hearts that leads us to do the right thing. And if we don't do the right thing, to be converted and ask forgiveness and begin again, rather than rationalizing, excusing, and blaming, which we all, even as a church, can get caught up in. So Lent's only 8 days away. It's a call to ongoing conversion for our church, for each of us personally, and for our world. We need it. take a quiet moment and see what the Lord speaks to each of our hearts. And is there something in our life that's sinful that instead of rationalizing and excusing, we need to have some healthy fear of the Lord, who in love wants to lead us in the right direction? God bless you.